Good morning, everybody. Before we open up the public hearing for House Bill 1291, if you would all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I am opening the public hearing for House Bill 1291 and welcome the sponsor to introduce the legislation.
Thank you, Chairwoman. My name is Representative Wood. I represent Merrimack 13 towns of Chichester and Pittsfield. I'm here to introduce House Bill 1291 FN, criminalizing the use of small unmanned aircraft systems for the purpose of flying over critical infrastructures and events without authorization. The reason why I'm here is at the balloon rally, and Pittsfield's noted for their balloon rally. We're doing our 44th this year. There's drones all over the place with hot air balloons, and we've been doing helicopter rides now for about 15 years. And they make announcements all day long on please, they're not supposed to be flying drones. They're all over the place. They're over the crowds. They're over where the balloons are. So I was there enjoying the festivities, and people kept coming up to me saying, "What the hell are you going to do about this?" So I said, "About what?" It's one of those things that you don't notice it unless it's bothering your what you're trying, the service you're trying to provide. Don't know a lot about drones, but I figured I'd do something, learn something. It seems like everybody thinks it's somebody else's job. The federal government's got it under control. I don't think that's the case. People just don't know what to do about these things. I can tell you one thing, just from my experience in Pittsfield in the hot air balloon rally, they're getting brasher and brasher. They're all over the place. It's a great event. I guess they must take some great aerial shots. But at some point, I looked at, I talked to people in the State House, felt that this was something that wasn't necessary. Um, I did hear Representative LaSalle's question at the other hearing on the privacy, and he mentioned about sitting on his porch watching this drone looking at him. And we had two people here from the State Department, State Safety Office, and pretty much one had no answer. The other one said, well, it depends if it takes off from what property, where it lands, I mean, this to me, if we think we got this under control, we can do a better job. So I figured I would I would introduce these two bills to, well, obviously we're talking about 1291, and I apologize for missing that hearing. But my thought was I would get a chance to talk about this and just act, just kind of get the conversation going and see if we can do a better job. I think we can do a better job that gives the legislation some teeth so that these people can get their jobs done. So if there's any questions, I'd be very happy to answer them. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Representative. Do you know what your bill would do differently from I think we passed two last biennium, if I'm not mistaken. Do you know what your legislation will do differently than what those have?
Yeah. Well, I apologize. I don't understand the other bills as well as I should. I've been learning more. I really thought the main difference here was the criminalization of the bill. If that was done in the previous, in that bill, then probably wouldn't do much more. We don't tend to, I'm new. My fourth year. I'm new at this. We don't tend to criminalize things. We tend to say you can't do things. So I thought it'd be a way to add some teeth to what we already had, and really because of this is not, I'm on election law. This is not an area where I have a lot of expertise in, but I just felt to be something for me to learn, and
Okay.
having this discussion would be helpful.
Okay.
I'm hoping for that.
Representative Prue, you have a question?
I do. So, are you aware that the FAA covers that drones can't fly over critical infrastructure? And are you aware that at your balloon festival, you can reach out to the FAA and create a no-fly zone for drones?
Yes. Thank you for your question. I believe they have tried that. And again, you know, I did not do an extensive search here. I think they tried the basic things and didn't really get a sense that anything was, you know, was really followed through. I think to be clear, you know, like I mentioned earlier, the way we represent this is very, very confusing. You know, to have an officer here telling Representative Lascelles that it depends where it takes off and lands, I don't think that gives me a sense that we're really doing we can do a better job than that. I'm not an expert in this area, but I would say that from my experience, I have I got a great property in Pittsfield. I got over 100 acres of land where people hunt. There's drones over there all the time. People are pretty reasonable, so I don't have a personal beef. I feel like my privacy's still been good. But I'll tell you right now, I've been there for 25 years, and they're getting brasher and brasher. So you know, to have testimony that you're sitting on the porch and the drone is waving to you, I believe it. They're definitely getting brasher. And everybody I've talked to said the same thing. So.
Maybe we'll have a chat.
Yes.
Representative Lascelles?
And just to correct the record, the drone didn't wave at me. I waved at the drone.
Oh.
But question with you, at your balloon festival, I mean, if one of those drones were to hit a balloon or something, that could be disastrous, right? And the second part of my question is, okay.
You know, again, I'm not sure what would happen. I mean, these weren't huge drones. They were more, I would say, they were everywhere, but they were not like commercial drones. But I'll tell you right now, I've seen some, you know, some drones that are pretty big. So I would say it all depends on what drone you have. The reality is that, you know, making announcements and trying to clear the airspace isn't an effective way when we don't know where these people are running these things from. I'm almost more concerned with the helicopters. We've been doing helicopters there for about 15 years, and they do short path, low flyovers, and it's a great feature. But you know, to have these things around coming in and out, you know, that's where the concern is. And again, this was brought to my attention. I was just enjoying the festivity.
Okay. Representative Murray?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would you believe that the FAA regulates the airspace? And the reason why the state mentioned before where the drone takes off from, because that's where we have jurisdiction, is like when things are on the ground. And so therefore I would recommend I believe Representative Prue's statement is probably the best way to help the festival deal with this, because we don't have agency over the space. So it's like if it
So that would be great for executive session.
Yeah.
Are there
Just-
any more
was it-
questions for the
Was there a
representative?
question?
Well, I guess does
Not
that
really.
clarify like why they were saying the like taking off from the ground thing as opposed to like, because that's like where we have jurisdiction, and that's
Thank you.
Let's make sure we're asking questions. Representative Muse.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for taking my question. Your bill specifies that that a penalty would apply if somebody doesn't fly their drone without prior authorization. Who would issue prior authorization?
Thank you for your question. I was assuming that depending on the activity, it would be the owner or the person responsible for, or even the town, depending on what was happening. If it was power lines, whoever owns the power lines, a simple authorization. I know drones need to fly commercially all the time. I know they use them for check the power lines, so that would be easy to get permission to have those drones there. It just doesn't seem that anything's really being done. So, and again, I was trying to be helpful. If I'm fine with the understanding that this bill, from a more technical point, doesn't really help. So, thank you.
We aren't angry at you. This is how we learn. Representative Sauls, did you have another question?
I do have a question. Representative Wood, your event sounds wonderful. When is that held?
The first weekend in August.
Thank you. I'll be there.
I will say, Representative, I have been to a balloon festival, and they are actually a lot of fun. I have a neighbor that had a hot air balloon, and I went up and begged to please come back down very quickly. I cried and sat on the floor. And we were only tethered. We actually didn't even move anywhere. Put me back. Are there any more questions for the representative? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much, Representative. Mr. Roberge? Robert, please correct me.
You'd put the French on it, the Roberge. I just go Roberge, whatever works. That's fine. But thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Griffin Roberge, Manager of Government Affairs with Eversource Energy. We're here, I guess, in broad support of the bill. I guess in its intent, we do recognize that a lot of this is, as has been discussed, regulated by the FAA. Again, not sure what direction that this bill would take, but wanted to come by and address two potential areas of clarification on the bill. One, I think Representative Muse hit on earlier, is that the bill does mention prior authorization. It's unclear in the bill who is giving that prior authorization. Is that the property owner? Is that the municipality? Is that some state entity? So I think some further clarification there would be helpful if this bill were to go forward. Additionally, as a regulated electric utility in the state, we do have an internal drone team that we use to fly over our own infrastructure to do inspections of our transmission and distribution assets. So frequently we will see rotting wooden poles, make sure that the integrity of our distribution wire is up to code and everything like that, and is safe and reliable. So what we would, I think, want to include, again, if this bill is to move forward, is some type of exclusion for regulated electric utilities to fly their own drones over their own infrastructure, that we're not, in essence, giving authorization to ourselves to fly over our own infrastructure to, again, ensure the safety and reliability of our system to serve our customers. I did share at least a draft of that amendment with Representative Wood before the hearing. I will share that with the rest of the committee via email after this hearing. Those are really the comments I wish to share today, and I'm happy to answer any questions that folks might have.
Representative Sauls?
Yes, thank you for your testimony, and I compliment you on the work that you do.
Thank you.
I just wondered, has Eversource had any interaction with the FAA, since we're using the FAA's name in vain?
Sure. Yeah. So, no, thank you for the question, Representative. So, yes, in talking with our internal drone team and our legal counsel, there are current efforts underway for some additional rulemaking through the FAA. It's my understanding that I think our team thought that rulemaking would be coming to a close sometime soon. It's not. They reopened the draft of rules for public comment. So I guess I would just say that continued rulemaking at the FAA level continues to evolve. Hope that answers the question. Thank you.
See no more questions. Thank
Thank
you very much. Ooh, like the chocolate. Mr. Ghirardelli? Good morning.
2020
There it is.
as a state employee at the State Fusion Center as our critical infrastructure protection analyst. So I can answer some questions. We also manage a UAS threat working group for the whole state. So that's who I am. Again, relaying the state police. Lieutenant Storm apologizes he wasn't able to make it this morning. So
And I'm Tricia Lambert. I'm the administrator for the Bureau of Aeronautics at the New Hampshire Department of Transportation. We work very closely together, as he had mentioned. We work with him on the task force. We also have a council that helps other state agencies to use drones within the state. So a lot of the state agencies, including state police and ourselves, work close together. In fact, we testified a lot together. So what I'm here to provide is the FAA side of the House with relating to critical infrastructure. I have testified several times going back to 2014, but specifically 2016, FAA had in a reauthorization bill to address critical infrastructure. And they had a certain amount of days to make that happen. It did not happen. It was put forward, I believe, in 2018 and 2024 as well, and it still has not been provided as far as how to deal with critical infrastructure, other than the federal side, which they do have restrictions over certain of their own critical infrastructure. So I believe the last testimony talked about rulemaking. There is a push to have this done and completed, and until that happens, it's very difficult for us to be able to restrict airspace on anything that they say, unless it's something that they sanction. So I'm here to answer any questions. I think that's where we're at, but I do think we're closer. In fact, the White House also had an executive order that supported this, to have the process for states or local municipalities to put forward critical infrastructure that could be protected at the state and local levels.
That's good information. Representative Saborndi Schwerner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for taking my question. I'm just curious if you guys have, maybe on recall, we have a nuclear power plant in our state. Do we have any data on trending on any incidents around that?
thank you for your question, sir. And that's a great example, sir, about an important piece of infrastructure here in the state. The security folks at the plant are members of our UAS threat working group. They've been great partners. So we've gone out to kind of do some drone response protocol training with them to develop a capability to identify and respond to something. As far as baseline activity, we don't have evidence one way or another that there has been a lot of activity there that's of concern. But at the same time, a lack of detection systems is a piece of that. I would just offer, sir, that the state was able, after years of work, was able to acquire a mobile detection system that is a Department of Safety asset that we can deploy for special events and out to create kind of those baseline understandings of activity. They are pursuing detection equipment also. And I would just add to Tricia's comment, there's also language in the National Defense Authorization Act that seeks to expand authorities for detection and mitigation for state and local entities, which is new, along with those two executive orders. So we do feel like there's some movement, but we do agree that we're a little bit behind the power curve when it comes to protection from these threats.
Representative Lascelles.
You mentioned critical infrastructure, but in Representative Wood's case, it's a festival type of thing where there are a lot of people. It's not really necessarily critical infrastructure, but it's more of a public event. But in that case, there is a danger to the public. Would the work that you folks are doing with the task force, would that cover that sort of festival?
Absolutely, sir. So the main reason, the main justification to acquire the detection system was protection of special events in the state. I would add, and again, appreciate the leadership from all of you to get 644-23, the bill the paragraphs that are being added to that bill that went through just earlier this month, so it's effective as of this month. The first paragraph of that bill points to 14 CFR Part 107 FAA regulation that does cover many things, to include operation over people, operation beyond visual line of sight, altitude restrictions, things like that. So the existing bill tying to that FAA regulation is good. So that is already on the books, per se, for us. It was mentioned earlier that the options to be able to get a temporary flight restriction, a TFR, for special events. Our Fusion Center manages all the special event assessment rating submissions for the state. There are many of them. And one of the things that we can say in that submission that goes to a special events working group, which is DHS FBI, to say that we are not fully equipped to be able to protect from drone threats at a large gathering. And that's the sort of thing that will help enable the ability to get that flight restriction. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, one follow-up if I may. Is there technology available that you could set up that would prohibit drones, you know, the signals and so forth, that would prohibit them from flying?
There is, sir, and that goes back to an authorities issue and accepting risk, to say like what we would call a non-kinetic kill. If you detect a vehicle and you're disrupting the command link between the operator and that vehicle, at that point you're accepting the risk for what might happen to that vehicle.
Okay.
There are very specific authorities and a handful of agencies in the U.S. government that are allowed to use that type of mitigation technology. And again, the National Defense Authorization Act does have language to explore SLTT use of that under federal authorities.
Thank you.
Representative Muse?
Thanks for taking my question. I'm a hobby photographer, but I have a lot of friends who fly drones, and I know at events like Sail Portsmouth and some of the events at Prescott Park, my friends who fly drones talk about having to get permission and having to get authorization. My guess is part of that has to do with who is across the river from Prescott Park. But there seems to be, it doesn't seem to be really clear to me at this point who you would really ask. I mean, how do you know you can fly a drone? And I could go on Amazon right now and buy a drone with a camera for $60. And I guess another question is, how do you stop folks who aren't interested in getting professional drone licenses and things like that?
Those are all great questions. So there's a couple things over in the Portsmouth area. It tends to be a very popular place because it's beautiful and it has the ocean and a whole bunch of things to take pictures of. The request from the FAA is required. You have the airport, which is protected. So that's the first thing. The Navy Yard is there. So there is a process of which to get permission to operate there, and that is through the FAA. And most commercial operators or Part 107 know that. I would agree with you. There is still, even after I think I'm on my 11th year here testifying regarding drones, is that there's still an educational process that is going on for especially younger people. You know, there are minors that have drones that go to purchase them, and some may not know. That process is continuing and ongoing. And we try to work with many of those groups. Part of the threat working group is not just for the threat, but also we talk about way to educate people to, you know, that just don't know. And it's not nefarious. It's just simply they didn't know. So it is a process. It's getting better. It's getting better from 10 years ago for sure. But that area, most commercial operators, I mean, we fly drones for infrastructure, and we know where we have to obtain those permissions. Manchester's another one where you can't just fly a drone anywhere you like. Concord, near the airports, is an obvious for them.
Never having bought a drone, and probably never will. But I'm curious, because of the restrictions and the penalties and also just danger of liability if you don't know what you're doing, just flying it into somebody. And I've seen videos like that where people have flown drones into other people unintentionally. What kind of information actually comes with a drone when you purchase it that provides guidance, does anything come with it, or does that depend on the manufacturer or who you order it from?
I'm not really sure which each drone provides. I mean, the
Yeah.
FAA provides information. There is training modules and those types of things on available to them, and we point them to those direction. I'm not really sure what each drone provides.
I would just add that some have come with those restrictions. So when you go to take off, it may be built into that system to say, all right, you're about to enter, kind of the geofencing that was mentioned before, you're about to enter a restricted area. I would note that one of the main manufacturers, DJI, the Jiang Industries, Chinese manufacturer, was above 80% probably of the hobbyist drones used here in the U.S. Had those restrictions and then removed them. So slightly less safe in that category.
Thank you.
Anybody else? We good? See no further questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Is there anybody else here wishing to testify on House Bill 1291 that has not turned in a pink card? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. And we have 3 minutes before we open our next hearing at 10:30. Great. I am opening the public hearing for House Bill 1302 and invite the prime sponsor to introduce his legislation.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I appreciate your time. I'm here to introduce HB 1302, which deals with post-arrest photographs or mugshots. And the purpose of the bill is to make the mugshots to be considered records compiled for investigatory purposes and not subject to 91A for certain offenses until a person has been convicted. The premise behind this bill is that it is common practice for mugshots to be published by many departments as soon as somebody has been arrested but not convicted. When that happens, the damage done to people's reputation is long-lasting, and that damage is not reversed if at the end of the day they are never convicted of anything or the charges are dropped. Also, there is a potential for creating a presumption of guilt and poisoning the jury pool if this ever goes to a jury trial. So the language of the bill, we have a few, findings at the beginning, but if you want to look at the bottom of the first page, starting at line 20, we define nonviolent offenses and violent offenses. This should only apply to the lesser crimes, right? Anybody who's, arrested for a Class A misdemeanor or a felony that has an element of violence, a physical force, is not protected under this. We only apply these protections to nonviolent offenders, right? We are protecting the post-arrest photographs by not allowing them to be disclosed until a conviction happens, but because we recognize there are times when mugshots need to be shared, we were careful to provide for the necessary exceptions, and you can see them, the initial language at the bottom of page 1, but the list of them is at the top of page 2. The mugshots may be disseminated when the subject presents an immediate threat or danger and we need to protect public safety, when the subject has failed to appear in court, right, while on bail, or committed other offenses and so on and so forth, and we need the public to help us locate it. We do exclude the people who are unlawfully present in the U.S. because they shouldn't have the same protections as citizens. And we do absolutely allow, if you look at Section 6, we don't want to interfere with anything that law enforcement normally does, like sharing those photographs with other law enforcement agencies and so on and so forth. So anything that's done there. And it's also specifically stated that this does not affect the dissemination of photographs of registered offenders under 651B. So in a nutshell, I tried really hard to balance the legitimate interests of the public with also the legitimate interests of the public under 91A and with the very clear needs of law enforcement to have these photographs and use them in doing their job. We worked really, really hard to find the right balance. And the one thing that I want to add, because I know there are a lot of people who want to testify, I didn't expect a crowd, but obviously I'm glad that the people care about this bill. I want to remind you that in the past, you've had federal convictions of people who created websites which purported to just serve a public serve as public information repositories where they went and collected mugshots from every department, and then they charged people a fee to remove them from the internet. Okay, this is, and you can find those cases, and I can find them if the committee would like them. I didn't document them already, but I remember seeing that discussion, and it was part of the reason why I feel compelled to try to help with that issue, because that is a clear example where public information is exploited to basically blackmail people. If you don't want this cruddy picture of you and the implication you committed a crime, even though you may not have, pay up, right? So I would really appreciate the committee's support with this bill, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Representative Murray?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for taking my question. I was just wondering, out of curiosity, the having it not apply to people who are undocumented, was that something that was that like a personal choice in drafting, or did you talk to law enforcement or have like a specific reason for that?
I have been in this legislature long enough to learn that you got to know what you can pass through the legislature and what you cannot pass through the legislature. And there are times when I have to settle for less than what I would personally write, because that is what can be passed through, in a nutshell.
Um, thank you, Representative. I'm just curious, or if you were aware that Louisiana passed this in 2022, and then in 2024 they repealed it.
I cannot claim that I'm aware of what Louisiana did.
Okay. Any other questions? Representative Muse?
So one of the things that I also see is that photographs may be released after non-violent offenses prior to conviction, and one of the first things is the first exception is if the subject presents an immediate threat or danger to the public, and release of the photograph is necessary to protect public safety. What kind of non-violent crime can you be arrested for where you would present an imminent threat of danger to the public?
I do not know enough about the large variety of crimes that people can be convicted for to give you a specific example, but I did want to make sure that I do not unintentionally limit the ability of law enforcement to protect people when a mugshot does need to be released to protect public safety. For example, I don't know whether, I just don't know enough about, again, we have so many crimes, right? But because I don't know that, I did not want to have language here that would unintentionally hamper the ability of law enforcement to protect people from an immediate danger. I would expect, just like you probably are wondering, I don't expect that to be a very frequent occurrence at all, but I did feel that having that safety valve there is necessary.
Follow up?
Follow up.
Sorry, would you be willing to consider amendments to address some of these issues?
I have always answered this question the same exact way. I'm the prime sponsor, but now the bill belongs to the committee. I will always be helpful to work with the committee. If the committee has specific concerns that they feel, amendments are needed, I will be happy to work on any reasonable amendment that would make this bill better if specific concerns are identified. I mean, that will be my answer every time I present a bill in every committee because of the way the bills work, right? It's not my bill anymore. So I'd be happy to help because I want it to pass.
And one more.
Follow.
The exclusion for undocumented people is interesting. Was there ever a point in your history in this country where you were here and you were not a citizen?
Yes, I was documented though, but I am a naturalized citizen. I am deeply familiar with how the immigration system works and how it doesn't. So yes, but technically I was never ever illegal. I came here on a J2 visa. Then I got H-1B, a second H-1B, then a green card, and then the citizenship. So my track has been through documented, but yes, I am a naturalized citizen, yes.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Godfrey?
Down on the button. Down on the button.
That button?
That button.
Bear with me. I am not the best public speaker. So my name is Monica Godfrey, and I'm here in support of House Bill 1302. And I'm here to share with you my experience, recent experience with the mugshots and the public dissemination of information prior to a conviction. So I feel very strongly in supporting this bill. I would like to ask that you consider an amendment to the bill that would wait. If you're a fugitive from justice, if your imminent danger is you are out there, then I feel like the press release and the mugshots are extraordinarily important in terms of public safety. But prior to a conviction, which is the story I'm going to share with you, it destroyed a life. So So my son Jeremiah Joseph Godfrey was arrested and accused of sex crimes against juveniles. And I'll read you the press release if that's okay. So the press release was on August 8th, 2026, and it reads as follows. Sex crimes, Twin Mountain, New Hampshire. As a result of two separate and criminal investigations, 2 men arrested for charges including felony aggravated sexual assault, possession of sexual abuse material. Troopers assigned to the Troop F barracks arrested 2 men in connection with separate criminal investigations. And that was pushed out on the state police site, Facebook, WMUR alerts. So literally everywhere, everywhere. Jeremiah is one of 4 children. He was born in Lebanon, and his entire life was spent within 30 miles of where he was raised in Wentworth. He played football. He was a father of 2 daughters, and one's 15 and one is 6. He was a people person. He made his career working with people. He was a salesman. He could sell anything. Absolutely anything. Cars, windows, you name it. He could sell anything. He was married, had 5 dogs, a cat he rescued that had gotten run over and lost its tail, chickens. He had just built a new house. And the press release made him immediately unemployable. And the social media jury convicted him before he even got a chance to stand trial. So from a journalistic point of view, I think the title alone in that press release brings rage, implicit, explicit bias, and that coupled with the charges led to everyone immediately believing the darkest things possible. And I think that might have been the point. On the night of his arrest, the WMUR alerts popped up all over our phones. The word spread. Our family gathered together, his sisters, nieces, childhood friends, to support one another. And we didn't know some of the individuals who were posting on Facebook sites and the town bulletin sites, but the comments were heinous and deplorable for a man they didn't even know or had met, or it was the most awful event of my life. And the worst part of it all was his oldest daughter who was in high school, was in school, and the social media blew up at school, and she had absolutely no idea. And she's been ostracized at school. She stopped going to school for a while. She has been in the hospital for cutting herself. It's destroyed her life. It's destroyed her ability to function as a 15-year-old girl in a small community. So those are some of the repercussions of what happens when those alerts go out prior to a conviction, from my perspective. So I'm going to skip to the arraignment real quick, and I have this copies for everybody. But during his arraignment, the judge had asked that Jeremiah had pretrial conditions to include a psych evaluation, electronic monitoring. And he was released on personal recognizance, no bail. At one point, and I have the audio from that arraignment, the judge had papers in his hands, and he looked at the prosecution and said, "This needs work," and put it down. So Jeremiah was released from jail with none of the pretrial conditions or the electronic bracelet. He walked home, walked about 5 miles from where he was released, got picked up from a friend, went home, said to his wife, "Do we have any iced tea?" And she said, got him an iced tea, he grabbed a handgun and went in his bedroom and shut the door and locked himself in a closet. And he read all of the social media posts that were going around, to include very specific ones where they told him he should die. And eventually, he took his life in that closet. So my goal here today is to consider what these press releases do, not only to the perpetrator or the alleged perpetrator, but to their families. And it destroys their lives. It has destroyed our lives, our ability to be comfortable and competent in our home of 40 years. People look at us differently. We've been told that we raised some creature, some monster, and that was not who he was. But all of his whole 38 years had been erased by one mugshot. One. And I guess what I'm asking this committee to consider is, how do you draw the line? They have been arrested but not convicted. Where do they're not a fugitive from justice? Why push that out? What's the benefit? And I tried to find statistics on, to correlate between what the success rate of this is in terms of coming up with more information for the investigation. And in fact, on November 10th, 2025, by certified mail, I wrote to Colonel Mark B. Hall of the New Hampshire State Police, and I asked the following questions. How does New Hampshire State Police determine what type of an arrest warrants this type of social media splash? Do you push these out on every sexual offender arrest? If no, what are the markers that distinguish one from another? Is there any consideration for what these releases do to the victims or their families? And if the intent is to obtain additional information, what data do you have to support that this is an effective tool? To date, I've had no response from the state police. I also reached out to High Sheriff Jillian Myers regarding protocols, and her response to me was, those requests would have to be directed toward the New Hampshire State Police. I'm also unaware if the state police have a policy or any guidelines established surrounding press releases and posts on social media. The troop commander of Northern New Hampshire is Chris Ladd. He may be a good contact person to reach out to. And again, I've heard nothing back. So I just sit here today and I ask you to consider additional support for these media pushes prior to a conviction. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. There won't be any questions for you today.
Thank you.
The committee offers our condolences for your loss, ma'am.
Thank you. Do you need these copies?
Representative Wheeler?
Thank you, Chairman Rhodes and members of the House Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee. For the record, my name is Representative Jonah O'Brien Wheeler, and I am here in support as a co-sponsor of this piece of legislation. Innocent until proven guilty is the moniker of a fair and judicious justice system. And you can't have innocent until proven guilty if we're having these mugshots put out into the public, in which the public, based off of what they'll naturally do in the court of public justice, determining that that individual, based off of that mugshot and the arrest, is guilty. And this happens all the time across the country. We just heard a story, and I'm sure we'll hear other stories of people whom this has happened to. There are exemptions in this piece of legislation because there are specific instances in which a mugshot is important. Somebody's on the lam, there are places where putting out information about somebody who is or has been arrested is important. But a general rule to put these out into the public leads to situations like the story we just heard before. So, Madam Chair, I would very briefly just say that we should not run a sensationalized justice system. And I think in a lot of ways, putting this information out to the public with social media how it is today, with the media how it is today, and with how the public intakes this information results in a sensationalized justice system that does not provide justice to those who are innocent until otherwise proven guilty by a court of law. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll end it. I'll take any questions if there are any, but
Representative Prue?
So do you think by prohibiting the picture that the rest of the story won't be released?
no. But the rest of the story being released is a little different than the sensationalized aspect of the imagery of the photograph. The rest of the story being released prompts people to read the actual story. It's like the headline politics. You know, you see a headline on Facebook, it says X, Y, and Z happened, but in fact, A, B, and C did. But people don't read the A, B, and C, they just see the X, Y, and Z. So that's how I would think about it. So the story is one thing, but the imagery and the sensationalization that can happen from that is another.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
See no further questions. Thank you,
Thank
Representative.
you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for joining us today. Mr. Ryder?
Okay, thank you so much for your time and your flexibility just then. He's very excited to come up. It's his first rodeo. My name is Henrietta Binks. I'm an advocate with lived experience in the sex trade. I'm a blue collar girl through and through. I grew up in the country in a working class family, and I'm the co-founder and co-director of the Ishtar Collective. We're a regional anti-trafficking organization run by survivors and workers that's been serving the Northeast for 6 years. I am here to express my strong support and my organization's support for H1302, a bill restricting the publication of post-arrest photographs for nonviolent offenders. I am here because my half-decade of work experience in direct services and anti-trafficking does inform me that the echo chamber of criminality, when not handled responsibly, does create barriers that stop people from exiting the sex trade, should they choose to. I think that we can agree that criminal records do create an echo chamber that's part of the air of consequence, understood. But more than that, the publication of a person's face before the point of conviction in the age of the internet, when people are doxing each other, when personal information is permeated and uncontrolled, this can have lasting impacts on people's lives beyond our ability to quantify. A picture and a criminal context published beside anyone's identity in this age without conviction can cause havoc that we might take for granted, but most vulnerable people see it as something that can mean barred access to gainful, lawful employment. It can mean barred access to steady housing and solid step forward in stabilization, which is what our anti-trafficking work is really about at the Ishtar Collective. To restrict the publication of mugshots would protect all people from the permanent invasion of privacy that comes with internet publication specifically. I believe that each American has a right to privacy. And in this case, up until the point of conviction, I do believe that it is our duty as fellow Americans to protect that privacy that was won over by the First Amendment. States like Texas, Illinois, and as previously mentioned, Louisiana have explored such policy. Louisiana only overturned that bill because the language was found to be confusing at that time. It is still a conversation happening in that state. I used to be a resident myself. And in Texas in 2023, they had a similar policy conversation. I have neighbors who have not been convicted, whose mugshots came to haunt them through the simple press of a search engine button. There's no way to know how their publication has continued to stigmatize law-abiding citizens who have either paid their debt to society or were never found guilty in the first place. I urge you to modernize the system that was created when the only place to publish was a newspaper, and restrict the publication of pre-conviction mugshots for your constituents. I thank you again for your time. I will take any questions.
Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Ryder?
Terrifying. Good morning. My name is Nicholas Ryder. I'm a New Hampshire resident of 37 years. I'm here to read my friend John's testimony of support HB 302. I am paraphrasing some of this testimony. Thank you for taking the time to consider an important bill. My name is John. I'm here today as a father and someone whose family was deeply affected by public release of a mugshot. Several years ago, I was arrested by a misdemeanor. Before there was any investigation, I had a chance to defend myself. The Nashua Police Department posted my mugshot on social media. My 10-year-old saw it online after his classmates found it and started sharing it around. They bullied him, calling him criminal and convict. It made him feel ashamed of something he had nothing to do with. I told my son about my arrest, and I thought it was appropriate for his age. He was upset, of course, but then he trusted me. What neither of us could do was guilt. He had nothing. He had already been decided. Overnight, our private family struggles became public humiliation. My son became distraught. Ultimately, we had to take him out of school, protect his mental health. Homeschooling was the only way to stop him from being bullied. No family should ever have to make that kind of choice because of a picture posted online. It didn't matter whether I was guilty or innocent. Once the mugshot is out, it's out. People see it, make assumptions. You can't erase it from the internet. Years later, that image still shapes how landlords, employers, neighbors, and communities see how you are. Publishing mugshots doesn't serve public safety. It causes more harm than good. It punishes the accused and their families affected and of their futures. What's done is done. In my case, I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm asking for fair laws to recognize that people are innocent until proven guilty. The bill is about families, compassion, and privacy. Privacy for people at their lowest moment. It ensures mugshots aren't used to legitimate public safety purposes. Not public shaming. Please pass this bill so not that other families can go through like mine did. Thank you.
See no questions. Thank you very much. Sasha Bennett.
Hello. Good morning. My name is Sasha Bennett. I am an advocate, a worker, and also someone who is a survivor of online stalking and abuse. I'm 25. And so when I was growing up in elementary school was when Facebook, MySpace, Instagram, things like that started. My parents are baby boomers. They were like, we don't know how to deal with this. We just know that if your picture were to be up there doing something stupid because you're young and you're going to do something stupid, we know that it would be there forever. And that has always stuck with me. I am also a survivor of child sexual abuse material. Someone took photos of me and put them online. And hard to think. I know that to this day, people can find those photos online. Part of the work that I do is working with websites on getting those down. I know to this day that those photos can be accessed online. I know that I made the stupid mistake as a kid of taking those photos and then sending them to someone and they release them. That was a stupid mistake on my part, right? I agree with that. I should not be blamed. I should not be punished for the rest of my life by those being online. Nor do I think that someone who made a stupid, non-violent mistake, because we all make stupid mistakes, nor do I think that their photos should have to be online. Two different situations, same outcome of them being forever. If someone wanted to find them, they would find them. So I support this bill. I think that the states that have done this, while they may have changed some things, overall made the right decision by supporting this bill. And I think that the more we can do to protect people's privacy, the more that we could do to protect their futures, the more that we could do that, even if they made a stupid mistake that may mentally haunt them for the rest of their lives, the more we can do to make sure that they know this will not stop you from getting a house. This will not stop you from getting a job. This will not make everyone on the street look at you. We need to do that. And I think that the jobs of legislators are to put up those roadblocks so that way people are able to look for a better life. So that's my story. I'm open to any questions.
Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Captain Amatucci?
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Thank you, committee members. My name is Matt Amatucci with the State Police. We are neutral on this bill. I apologize. I just have a couple comments and more questions for the committee to consider than answers, and then I'll certainly take any answers or any questions that you may have. Often, press releases are done simultaneously to bail late at night. Law enforcement will have to decide whether a booking photo should be released or not. Looking at the exceptions, what qualifies as urgent public safety need? Criminal trespass, if someone's walking around someone's house, loitering, prowling, DUI subsequent. What if it's a fifth offense? Habitual offenders, indecent exposure, lewdness, high-speed pursuits through multiple jurisdictions. Would those booking photos be released? Again, oftentimes we're doing these press releases in the middle of the night before the end of a shift, and these are decisions, these are every incident is going to be different. In the way that this law is structured, it seems subjective as to what would be released, when it should be released, and how it would be released. So those are things that I think the committee should consider in the way that this law is, or this bill is proposed.
You okay for questions?
Yes.
Representative Prue?
Why are they released at all? I'm just wondering, what does the police department see the usefulness of them? I guess.
So thank you for the question. The media is constantly reaching out for press releases. The public has a right to know, and that is what we get, asked multiple times a day. It's the media 91A requests, and oftentimes we just proactively submit a press release. This person was arrested. These are the charges. If booking photos are available, they'll be disseminated. If they're in the hospital, or if there wasn't a booking photo, obviously it wouldn't be disseminated at that time.
Thank you.
Representative Muse?
I'm wondering what is the mechanism that governs how a press release gets from your agency, let's say, to WMUR alerts? Is that something that, do you select the ones that are sent to WMUR? Is there a feed where they get to maybe choose between several? How does that work?
So thank you for the question. We have a public information officer, so press release will be draft. It is disseminated to the PIO, to communications, and from communications, it's disseminated to numerous media outlets.
We had a bill in 2021, HB 125, I think, that tried to cover some of the same ground. So this is an issue that's been kind of kicking around in New Hampshire for a while. I remember at the time, some of the folks from law enforcement testified that they would look into some of these practices, that there were internal policies that actually governed release of photos. To your knowledge, was any review ever performed of policies and practices regarding releases of this kind of information?
So thank you for the question. Not that I'm aware of. I know with juveniles, there's certain things like that are not put out. Oftentimes, if it's involving a suicide, we try to protect the identity of that individual.
Minors. Yeah.
Minors,
Yeah.
correct.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I remember the conversation as well, Representative Muse. All right. See no further questions. Thank you very much, Captain.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else here wishing to testify on House Bill 1302 that has not turned in a pink card? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. And it is time for our 11 o'clock hearing, but I am going to take a 10-minute recess to give our members a quick minute. Welcome back. Wait. We are going to open the public hearing for House Bill 1308 and welcome the sponsor to introduce his legislation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. House Bill 1308 is an enhancement on penalties for passing school buses while they're actively loading and unloading children. This is one of the most dangerous actions that someone can commit behind the wheel. It is tantamount to reckless endangerment, but it's traditionally not charged as reckless endangerment. Right now, the penalty, as of when I drafted the bill, and you can see the penalty changes in the bill, it was $150 for the first offense. I'm told that it's been scheduled up to $500. After the third offense, at $350, or it could move to $500, and it was worded as the director may suspend a license for 30 days. So it became the discretion of the director for third and subsequent offenses. As it was written, it's currently also fairly unenforceable. The bus driver's testimony is allowed as evidence, but when somebody starts driving around the bus driver is scrambling to slam the door, to not let kids out, and is trying to look for where the kids are, and now they have the further responsibility of writing down the color, make, model, and license plate, and if they can, identifying factors of the driver. It's not practical. The standard to pull the cameras from the school bus, as it's written right now, is a warrant on a $150 traffic violation that may have been scheduled up to $500. I don't know any law enforcement officer out there who's pulling a warrant from a judge over a minor traffic violation. Now, what I have done with this bill is I've scheduled it up. So instead of being a standard minor non-traffic violation, we've made the first offense a Class B misdemeanor, a minor misdemeanor. Second offense a Class A misdemeanor. We're changing the standard on the camera from a warrant signed by a judge to a subpoena by a law enforcement officer or the district attorney. Those cameras are operating on the bus on public roadways. I've heard some people say, what about right to privacy? There is no right to privacy on a public roadway. I've heard people ask, well, what if a child is recorded on the camera? Well, we can redact the face of the child, but I want to know how close a car passing a bus is to a child when we're pressing charges. And so by reducing the standard for the cameras and increasing the level of offense to make it viably investigatable, my goal here is to create serious repercussions for, again, what I believe is more dangerous than reckless endangerment and as dangerous or more dangerous than DUI. And these penalties that I proposed are still less than those two offenses. The other thing I would like to touch on is somebody invariably is going to ask me if this is a problem and what documentation that I have of these offenses. The problem with answering that question is in talking to bus drivers and bus driving companies. They will tell you that this happens routinely. Sometimes they'll go a whole week and not have it happen, and sometimes it'll happen 3 times in a day. And they'll call and report it to the police, and the police I've talked with police departments about this. When they have enough information, they will go knock on somebody's door and tell them that there is a citation that they could give and give them a warning or something, but it's very hard to prosecute this without the evidence, which takes a warrant to get, and without complete positive identification from the bus driver of actually who was driving that car. So there's a mismatch right now in how many people are being charged with it with the frequency of occurrence, and the mismatch is in documentation. Because, again, the bus driver companies are saying that this is happening, but they've stopped reporting it. And the police are only able to investigate a certain amount of them without evidence. At the end of the day, what I want the people of New Hampshire, the drivers of New Hampshire, to know is that if you think your time is more valuable than the safety of the children of the Granite State, then you don't get to drive on our public roadways. Pending any questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. So I do have a question, and so when you go to states that have the traffic cameras, right? I mean, I personally hate those, especially when you receive a ticket in the mail and somebody else was driving your car. And now you have to go fight with that person to get money back for a ticket that you now are responsible for when you are not the one in Maryland. So I do see it does say owner or operator, but how are you distinguishing between the two? right? Because you did mention, I mean, it happens rather quickly. So I'm just, that is my, I guess, concern and or question.
That is a fair question, Madam Chair. The burden of proof is still on prosecution. It is not, this doesn't say the car gets a fine or the car gets a misdemeanor. The burden of proof is still on the prosecution by making the camera available at a lower standard. If the investigating authority can positively identify the driver, then they can push misdemeanor charges on the driver. Unfortunately, if there is reasonable doubt of who is driving the car, then yes, that case should be dismissed because the burden of proof is still on the state. The car was there, but if you can't prove the driver, you can't prosecute.
Okay, and then just one follow up. And this might be my ignorance, and I apologize. Do all buses in the state have cameras? 'Cause I don't
know-
think that they do.
I don't know that all buses have external cameras. I know that a lot do, and that it's becoming more prevalent. And I know a lot of buses have internal cameras as well. This isn't about the internal cameras. Those are still controlled by superintendent for bullying issues, etc. But many of the buses have external cameras, either bumper cameras or actually on the stop sign itself.
Okay. Representative Muse, did you have your hand up?
Thank you for filing this bill.
Thank you, thank you, sir.
The question that I do have is that if the process currently requires a police officer to get a warrant to actually search the camera or to actually have pictures retrieved from the camera, how does making it available by subpoena to the county attorney? I'm not quite sure what that accomplishes. It's line 6 and 7. So your change is the camera footage from the bus may be used as evidence as proof against the vehicle owner or operator, and shall be made available by subpoena to the county attorney. Who's asking for the subpoena? Is that law enforcement?
Law enforcement or the district attorney. I was trying to reduce the standard from being a judge.
Okay.
If the committee thinks that that's not the proper language to do that, I would ask you to help me with the amendment, or I will help you with it. It's your bill at this point, but that's my goal was to reduce the standard from a judge to the investigative authorities.
And follow up. And one thing I note is that you added law enforcement when you were talking to me here, but I don't see it in the bill. So if your intent is that anyone other than a county attorney should be able to make that subpoena, it should probably be in the language of the bill.
It was in the original draft. I missed that it didn't come out of the final draft. I apologize. Yes, my intent was that law enforcement or the prosecuting district attorney would be able to get that without going up through a judge.
Thank you.
So are bus companies not willing to give you the film, police officers the film without a subpoena or a warrant?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Representative. The bus company that I was talking to most often said that they're not allowed to turn over the camera footage to anybody unless it's been in writing, asked for specifically by the superintendent, or unless they have been served a warrant. That's all privacy with the bus contract. So my understanding from the bus companies is you're correct, they are not allowed to. A lot of this is crazy. It's crazy that people think that it's okay to drive around school buses, a 13-foot tall, 56-foot long lit up yellow bus with a stop sign out that says children on the ground, and people think it's okay to drive around it.
And just to clarify, I just want to, it is your intention to make these be mandatory minimums. They're not, I guess, mandatory maximums, right?
Yes, Madam Chair, It is my intention to start pulling licenses and giving mandatory fines.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Karen Holden?
No problem. Good morning, committee. Thank you for letting me take the opportunity to come and testify this morning in favor of this bill 1308. It's in my opinion, and I am here, I manage the school bus operations for the Manchester School District. We transport over 5,000 students daily. And I'm also the vice president of the New Hampshire School Bus Transportation Association. It's in my opinion that this behavior puts our children at serious risk in the current consequences that are in effect right now often are not enough to deter the repeat offenders out there. Passing this bill sends a clear message that endangering our children will not be tolerated. It reinforces the accountability, it supports public safety, and it complements the existing efforts to protect our children as they travel to and from school on a daily basis. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you may have for me.
Representative Prue?
My same question. Why do bus companies not release the film to police without a warrant or a subpoena?
In Manchester, I handle the stop-on violations, and I will tell you they come in daily. As you can imagine, in our city, we have a lot of one-way roadways. So unfortunately, we have children crossing major roads in our city on a daily basis. Due to having no control over the way the roads are built. But yes, we do have cameras, and yes, we have sent footage over to the police department. The problem is outside cameras, the pixels on those cameras, the way they are designed, will not pick up a license plate. You would need a specific camera, and those will be the ones that would be on the stop arm, which would give you the information that you need. And sometimes, unfortunately, the cameras are like any other software or technology out there. They don't always work the way we want them to. And like the gentleman before me was stating, when a school bus driver is stopped releasing children, and in our city we release anywhere from 10 to 20 at a time on a busy roadway because we have highly populated areas, that driver is concentrating on making sure that traffic is stopped around them and the students are exiting. And unfortunately, sometimes cars just come up. We've had cars come up both sides of our school buses in the city of Manchester. And the drivers do what they can to try to get the most information that they can.
Yep.
But, you know, when you visualize it and you think of a vehicle just passing, you know, just getting the plate number and then trying to get the color and the make and the model and then trying to attempt to get a description of the driver.
Oh, I get that. And that's why I'm like to see the cameras upgraded.
Yes.
So I just have a question. I agree, they're big, they're yellow, flashing red lights. The only thing it's missing is they do have signs actually, so I guess they're not even missing the giant sign.
Yes, they do.
What is the procedure? What would the procedure be for a bus operator and when this is happening?
First and foremost, their attention is concentrating on the students that are exiting the bus to make sure that they are gaining the curb, whether they're crossing or whether they're getting off curbside. If they're crossing, the driver is responsible to make sure that traffic is stopped coming up from behind them. And then when the students are exiting, the driver is scanning their mirrors. And then sometimes in an instance, if it's in an intersection, a car will come around the corner, and we've had some near misses in our city. Unfortunately, the driver, like I had said, will take whatever information they can get. If there's parents at the bus stop, we've had parents that have also called and given information, and then a report is filed with the police department, and then we just hope and wait that we'll get a subpoena, for our driver to attend court to testify.
So if I may have a follow-up to that. And
Sure.
so I know that one of the school districts where I live, I don't want to say it's like a dispatch, but like if there's a kid that came running out late, like from school to go home, and like we walkie it, and then they come back around and they pick them up. But there's a specific person that we call for that. So when this would be happening, right? Like they see somebody who's not stopping, is there a person that the bus operator would call like then to say like this just happened, maybe to be able to get the person while they're still driving?
The drivers will call in and ask dispatch to take down a plate number.
Okay.
But in that instance, of course, and in the city of Manchester, it's always going to be what's priority at the time.
Sure.
So I can call and say that this had just happened. But again, unfortunately, I can't say that we've had police that or dispatch right out to that area to try to catch up with the offender.
Okay. Yeah. Hold on one second. We certainly do have an issue sometimes with actually enforcing the laws that we do have, which is a shame. Representative Lascelles?
Thank you for taking my question. It incenses me when this happens, and it happens entirely too often. And I can't imagine the motivation behind of someone being in such a hurry that they pass one of these school buses. My question of you is, how many of these people in the city of Manchester, I'm sure you have those daily, how many of those people are actually prosecuted and convicted?
I can tell you this year, I have not had one driver subpoenaed as of yet, and we're in January. So school has been in session for 6 months now, and like I said, those reports come in daily. But like the gentleman prior to me was speaking to, is that police departments will sometimes look for information that they can take and use to go out and write a citation. So they're looking for an exact description of the driver, an exact plate number, the color, the make, the model. And unfortunately, because the car is just passing at such a, at a rate of speed, that the driver unfortunately isn't able to get all that information. And even if I provide camera footage, which I could do, it's not going to pick up the plate number. And then sometimes the police can't, or maybe won't, prosecute somebody that is not the owner of that vehicle. It could be a friend, somebody else that's operating the vehicle.
From an operational standpoint, say we're on a 2-lane road, we have a school bus. What would prohibit the school bus pulling catty-cornered in the middle of the street so a car cannot pass when they're discharging students or picking up students? So they're blocking the street, so neither way, nobody can get by the bus.
Well, I will tell you that we have had drivers that have done that in the past. Unfortunately, that is illegal. They do not have the right to impede on, overtake another lane. So in the event that they started that practice, they could actually be fined for overtaking the other lane.
See no further questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else here wishing to testify on House Bill 1308 that is not turned into pink card? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. And we will now open the public hearing for House Bill 1364. And welcome the prime sponsor to introduce her legislation.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Alessandra Murray. I represent Hillsborough District 20, which is Manchester Ward 9, and I'm here to introduce HB 1364. So this legislation might look familiar to you. It's essentially a copy of a bill that we've passed out of this committee and House unanimously the past 2 years. So it's about reporting requirements. Originally, when we've passed this before, it was in relation to the Northern Border Alliance that was operating in the northern border here in New Hampshire. I've taken the exact same language and just changed it to be relating to the counties and any other municipalities that are engaging in the 287G program. So 2 reasons for this. One, clearly we like reports, we like data. And I think that the public has a right to that data. But also with this, particularly with the county, as someone who, engages with my county budget and things like of that sort, we've had issues getting the information we need to make informed decisions when it comes to the budget, because of this data not being provided to the executive committee, essentially, when it's been requested. So my hope is that by requiring it to be gathered in the first place, and this also would have the information reported to the Attorney General, who would then submit a report to us surmising that data. I think it will make that process when we get to the budget a little bit easier. The data will be there, will be collected, and will be available to us. And that's about it.
I don't see any questions.
Thank you.
Run, Representative. Mr. Trumbull?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman and committee members. My name is David Trumbull. I'm from the town of Ware, and I support this bill, especially as it relates to New Hampshire law enforcement relating to immigration actions in the state, which we don't know. Will that be increasing? Will there be a program that was similar to what was done in Maine, in our state? I just think it's important that we are, as the public, have a right to know. Obviously, our state constitution has a whole provision about the public's right to know. And in this case, there have been numerous cases of the rule of law not being followed. CNN had a report this week. There's a Republican appointed judge in Minnesota who was bringing in the ICE director. I guess they worked it out that he didn't have to come in. But one of the points of that case was there's more than 2,000 cases in which U.S. judges have ruled that ICE has illegally detained people in this past year. So that means like 6 or 7 people a day in this country who have been detained, arrested, who are citizens of the country, maybe naturalized citizens, or here legally through the immigration system have been picked up and detained. And so it's important that if there is a major operation in New Hampshire, that there would be data that would let us know if that's happening in this state, or are we doing things in a way that's avoiding those sorts of mistakes, because everybody should be protected by the due process and the rule of law. The other thing is that the impact of this is falling heavily on the Hispanic community, people of color in general, but the Hispanic community. The other day you had a hearing here on masks and badges, and it was a packed room, so it was a lot of information. But I just want to reemphasize one point from that, which is that a third of immigrants in the United States who are here legally, that means either they're naturalized citizens or legally here, are no longer participating in public life. That means they aren't going to work, they're not going to school, they're not going to the doctor's office because they're afraid. And I know personally a number of people of color who carry their papers with them wherever they go now because they're worried that just because they're a person of color, they will get stopped. And I mentioned this the other day in a hearing, and someone said, well, like, how much is that? And I looked it up, and there's been a survey of this. For white people, like myself, less than 1% of people carry their papers with them. We're not worried about getting picked up by ICE, but 12% of Hispanic people in the country. So just think about that. 1 out of every 8 is carrying their papers. So we had snowstorm the other day. I went out and shoveled. If you lived in a city and you were Hispanic, you might very well take your passport with you to go shovel your walk or help your neighbor who's older and can't shovel their walk, help them. I'm just saying, we know this is happening in the country. There's breaks in the rule of law. If you have data, then the New Hampshire people have their right to know fulfilled. That's all. I just think it's just common sense that we should have this sort of data, make sure everything works properly in the state. So that's all. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Dylan? Now we can.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Chairwoman. This is my second time testifying at the State House, first time in front of this committee, so thank you for having me. My name is Dylan Hoey. I reside in Manchester, and I am the director of the New Hampshire Alliance of Immigrants and Refugees. We're the only organization in the state of New Hampshire that advocates exclusively on behalf of immigrant and refugee communities. And I am here today in strong support of HB 1364. We believe New Hampshire residents have a right to know how law enforcement time and resources are being used, which allows them to judge for themselves whether local police agencies should be taking on federal immigration enforcement responsibilities. Our answer is a clear and unequivocal no. This bill mirrors the transparency we already require for the Northern Border Alliance under RSA 21P:69, which requires semi-annual reporting, quote, of measurable program results and a detailed accounting of program funding and uses, end quote. We know this reporting works. For example, the latest NBA report shows that in the second half of 2025, officers reported over 800 incidents and 6 arrests, none of which, mind you, were immigration related. In contrast, 287G agreements and activities remain a black box. A recent ACLU New Hampshire FOIA request revealed that the Colebrook Police Department billed the federal government over $100,000 for the arrest and detention of a single individual. I ask you all in good faith whether a $100,000 bill for one detention constitutes a tiny sliver of data, and to consider what other costs may be borne by the state and federal government for other 287G activities that currently go underreported. Some here have also expressed concern about the administrative burden of this bill. My response is simple. Local law enforcement agencies already calculate many of these statistics because they're billing DHS and ICE. The data exists, and we are simply asking that it be shared with the public. Finally, I know that there are concerns about restrictions on what information agencies can share while cooperating with the federal government. This bill only requires aggregate data and summary statistics, the same type of non-identifying information that DHS and ICE regularly releases. In my view, this is a common sense bill grounded in accountability and fiscal responsibility, and New Hampshire Air encourages legislators to vote OTP. Thank you.
Seeing no questions, thank you very much. Anybody else? Is there anybody else here wishing to testify on House Bill 1364 that is not turned into pink card? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. And what time is it? Wait. Oh, cool. Right. Our next hearing is at 12 o'clock, so just a little less than 15 minutes. Good afternoon. Welcome back. I'm going to open the public hearing for House Bill 1537 and welcome the sponsor to introduce his legislation.
Surprised to see people here on Friday.
Welcome to the Cool Club.
Well, I started on this committee.
Welcome back to the Cool Club.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Jordan Ullery, Hillsborough 13 down in Hudson. This is a constituent-driven bill that aids school bus drivers in reporting scofflaws who endanger our children. I don't know if any of you have seen the video that came out of Pelham where a young girl was getting off the bus and was that close to being dead. At an AWMUR, it was all over the place. That's right here. I've seen individuals in Massachusetts ignore the school buses. That's to be expected. It's Massachusetts. But up here in Hudson, in Litchfield, in Pelham, in Nashua, Manchester, also bad. They put the yellow lights on, tell you to slow down. Nobody slows down. Then they put the red lights on, mandating that you stop. I can make it. I don't see any kids there. Who cares? What happens is the school bus driver is driving. He's worried about the kids. He's worried about the traffic around him. But in order to report somebody who runs the school bus stop bar, the little stop sign that comes out from the side of the bus, he has to be able to identify that vehicle, when it happened, and who was driving that vehicle. Remember, a violation in criminal law, as you know, is beyond reasonable doubt. Therefore, oftentimes it becomes difficult for the driver to relate the correct information to law enforcement to allow for a ticket. Earlier today, you heard for an increase in ticket prices. I support that. Signed in and supported that. Good idea. But also what is needed is some assistance to the school bus driver. This is a carefully crafted bill in order to protect the civil rights of the motoring public that would be captured by the camera by stopping for the stop sign. That is that the tape, the disc recording of their vehicle plate number and the driver is erased automatically after 2 weeks, I believe is in here. However, if the school bus driver notes a driver endangering his passengers, he has 7 days to report that. They can recoup that section of the disc. It's time blocked and identified so it can be used in court as positive identification. So with the complaint of the school bus driver, as is required currently, this then becomes supplemental information. And I use the word supplement the bus driver's complaint. I had a libertarian organization call me and complain about using cameras to enforce law. This doesn't enforce law. It's not a camera to enforce law. Rather, this is supplement to the oral or the visual complaint filed by the school bus driver. And it's as simple as that. It just helps school bus drivers, and it may help with the issue of getting people to comply with protecting the children. And I hate to say this, but it's for the kids. But at any rate, it is actually. And I'll be happy to answer any questions, Madam Chair.
Representative Lascelles?
Thank you for taking my question. I just wondered, in researching this bill, do you know of any other states that have put in place law that have been successful in this effort?
Not directly, but I've been told by other individuals that yes, that has, but I can't cite those for you.
Thank you.
Representative, I do have a quick question. So right now the school buses are there. They have the cameras on the arm, right?
No, They do not have cameras on their arm.
I'm
They have them on the inside.
hold, please hold.
Yeah, thank you.
They said that they're on, right? Okay, so. Yeah. So we had the bill that you mentioned that we just had, the woman from Manchester that is basically oversees the bus operations. There she is. Okay. Okay. We might have to have her back up here. I think you're good. I'll ask her.
Okay, because I was informed by the school bus drivers that wanted to put this forward, that that was not the case in the state, that they had interior cameras, those that chose to put it in. And this is not a mandate that they be put on, this is an observation. Recording people visually, you can do that in the public already, but this is a high resolution one to be used for criminal prosecution, which needs an added layer, the digitalization of the frames that are being recorded, and so that it can be used and verified in court as being an unmodified tape.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. All right, any other questions? Thank you very much.
I was all ready.
I believe we're going to have a lot of, if there's any confusion, she's going to help us out.
Yes, my information
hope.
on that is that the police association is non-committal in this, but monitoring it. And I do believe there are people here from School Bus Teamsters Union that are in support of this.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Holden?
Okay, well, thank you again for allowing me to testify in favor of this bill. So this bill is all about protecting our children. Drivers who illegally pass our stop school bus put students at a serious risk. And the current enforcement tools that are in place don't hold the drivers as accountable as they should. This bill, it's not going to create new penalties or expand the surveillance that the cameras are doing. The camera is only going to be activated when the school bus is stopped and the red stop sign comes out and the lights are activated. The footage is only going to be used to solely document the specific dangerous event that's occurring when a car is violating that stop sign. So that is why I am in favor of this bill passing. And I'm happy to take any questions regarding the cameras on the outsides of the school buses.
Would you be able to maybe explain that a little bit more? So is it that they do have cameras, but they're not high resolution cameras?
School buses have cameras wherever an agency requests them to be placed. In the city of Manchester, we have cameras on the inside and the outside of our school buses. On the outside of our school buses, they are not on our stop arms. They are on the side panels of our school bus. And that's really just to catch if we have accidents or near misses. It just basically shows where the bus is traveling and whatnot. The stop arm cameras have a much higher resolution, come at a much higher cost, and those ones are designed to be affixed to the stop arm, and those would be what would clearly pick up a vehicle that would be illegally passing the school bus coming from in front or coming from behind. But I think the majority of folks in the industry that I know don't have those specific cameras because, like I said, they come at a much higher cost. I know at one time there was a grant that was out there that was used to help fund different transportation companies that were going to place those cameras on because the fines that were being paid from the offenders would help reduce the cost of the cameras and whatnot. I don't know what's happened to that. That was a few years back.
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions? Representative Murphy?
Thank you, Madam
Welcome to the conversation, Representative.
Thank you. I know, but I don't always say things. Just a question. Just a question in terms of, I don't know if you're the appropriate person to answer this, but I noticed this HB is HBL. So does this mean there's no fiscal note attached to this? So is that because the local municipalities would be responsible for the cost of these? I'm confused.
My understanding, and I can have the sponsor if I'm incorrect, is that it would be up to that school district or that transportation company if they wanted to install them. Is that correct, Representative?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
So it's totally enabling legislation if they choose, and then they would be responsible for coming up with the funds, basically just like the camera footage for police officers. You did say that there were grants available, that districts have taken advantage of grants.
In the past, there have nothing most recently, because I would be sure to jump on that grant, because it is something I know that has just become an enormous problem in the state as well
Becoming an
as in
epidemic,
our
really.
city.
It's ridiculous.
Mhm.
Representative Muse, did you have a question? Oh, Representative Murphy, are you finished? Okay. Do you need a second? Okay. Is there anybody else? We can go back to Representative Muse. Is everybody else good? Representative LaSalle's?
My question was to you, and I appreciate your input, is do you have an estimate of how much one of these high-resolution cameras on the stop arm would cost? I just did a quick Google search, and they said between $300 and $7,000 per bus.
Would that be for the entire bus being outfitted, or just that
The
one
stop arm,
camera?
The stop arm.
I would say upwards of 500 for the camera, and then of course you have to have somebody come in, install it for you, and get it wired and whatnot into your system. So probably upwards of $1,000 per bus. I know in the city of Manchester we have close to 60 buses in our fleet, so you can, kind of figure what the cost to us would be. It's a high cost.
Representative Muse?
Given the fact that cameras already seem to be on the interiors of buses, and you say in Manchester there are cameras on the side of the buses, one of the things I'm thinking of is, do we really need to pass a bill authorizing these cameras, or is this just something that municipalities can do on their own already?
Well, in my understanding of this bill is that by passing this bill, it allows the courts to be able to use the video footage that is obtained, because right now, as the law speaks, and this is my understanding of it, is that you cannot, some courts will not permit this camera footage to be used because it's actually on a public roadway. So if you go into court and the lawyer says, well, the law says that you can't use this because it's on a public roadway, whereas this law specifically states that you're just using this one specific event. And could I call on one of my colleagues here that might be able to speak to it better than myself?
Would you like him to join you at the table?
Yes.
Certainly.
Could I bother you to join me?
Sir, if you could just,
I'm sorry.
if you could just introduce yourself. You're welcome to pull up a chair.
Sorry.
Mornings, or good afternoon at this point. So my name
Welcome.
is Chris Burke. I'm the Pupil Transportation Coordinator for the New Hampshire DMV.
Okay, and then you had some questions that you,
Regarding the footage that you can use in the courts, whereas some courts won't permit it if it's being recorded on a public roadway.
Yeah, so that was my understanding, was that sometimes the judge would not allow the footage to be used based on the way that current law is written.
so it's admissible.
Correct.
Interesting.
That's my understanding, and I'll preface it with I could be incorrect on that, but that was my interpretation.
So basically, this basically what the situation that we have is that we're falling under the the Dillon rule as far as you can only do it if the state gives you permission to do it, and that this is kind of like the gap there. So we need this bill to say yes, you may use the footage that is that is on the cameras. What else is the purpose of the camera? It seems a little backwards, doesn't it?
I would, yes.
Yeah. I think so. Maybe two. Okay. Well, we have two, sounds like we have two good bills today, and they might both be doing the same thing, but doing it differently. So we're going to look into that and find out. So any other any Representative Murray?
Is it your understanding that right now the footage likely isn't being is not admissible in court because of the way that New Hampshire right to privacy laws ban us from using like video recordings to give traffic violations, for example? So it's kind of like falling under the same thing.
Yes, Representative, that's my understanding of why it wouldn't be admissible.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? We good? Well, thank you both very much for your testimony. It was very helpful today. Mr. Lachlan? Lockton.
Good afternoon. My name's Rick Lawton. I'm a Dover, New Hampshire resident, lived in New Hampshire my whole life. I'm here to support this bill. I represent Teamsters Local 633 in Manchester. We represent over 900 school bus drivers throughout the state. So some of your questions, maybe I might have a little bit of expertise in answering. We represent the drivers in Hudson, just quickly. Dover, Somersworth, Nashua, Exeter, Tilton, Belmont, Seabrook, Hampton. We represent 900. Any school bus that says first student on the side of it is a Teamster driver. We also have drivers with STA. This is a great bill. It's a good step in the right direction. Not every bill is perfect, but we have to protect the kids, you know, getting on and off these buses. And I don't know what the Manchester buses are equipped with. I can tell you that in the 12 different yards we have and 900 drivers, there are no outside cameras on the buses. The only cameras we have are on the inside that watches the driver and it watches the children. Because sometimes the kids are acting up, the driver is acting up. That's the only. There are no outside cameras, and if there are some buses with outside cameras, they may be like backup cameras and things like that, but they're not high resolution. They're not going to catch any of that. We had an incident over in Exeter a while ago, where somebody just blew right through as it was loading, unloading children. The driver saw the car, but of course, the driver can't, as watching the children get on and off the bus, you can't take license plate numbers. The car goes by like that. Luckily, a parent was at the stop for some reason, and they had a dash cam of their own. They got the license plate number. The police were called. The police called this person. I don't know, of course, what happened to him, but you know, he did get caught. It doesn't happen a lot. But if it happens once and some child loses his life, you know, is it worth $1,000 for that bus or $2,000 for that bus? These buses are, I don't know what, they're $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, whatever they are a piece. To put a camera on the swing arms to me would be a minor addition to it. And as you know, the current law is hard to enforce because the police officers aren't at every bus stop. And as I said, the bus drivers themselves, they're busy watching the children get on and off the bus. It's a very difficult job. These bus drivers are up at 4 a.m. every day. You know, they're wonderful people. They really are. And we're very lucky to have 900 of them in our union. The enforced enhancement tool part of it is you have to have a high resolution because when cars go blowing by, if you're sitting there, even if you're sitting looking, you're not gonna be able to read that license plate on the way by. And it's very important. I mean, this is extremely important, especially with the time change and the kids are getting on in the dark in the morning and getting off in the dark at night. You really, there doesn't seem to be, in my mind, a reason not to support this bill. The technicalities of it are beyond me. I'm not sure where all that is, but this is certainly a step in the right direction. There's cameras in the buses now, like I said. and there's rules as to how those cameras are used. We represent truck drivers and freight drivers, and there's cameras in those trucks. They're not exterior cameras, but there's rules on how all those cameras can be used. So, you know, you just put the cameras on, you develop a system, you develop a set of rules for it, and they're only used for what they're intended, for people blowing through. As far as I know right now, Florida, New York, and New Jersey are the only states that have them mandated on their buses. And I'm sure it's for the expense. There's no doubt it's expensive. Some of the school districts, I mean, we represent bus drivers in affluent school districts. I'm a non-affluent school district. So there is an expense. But if some child was hurt, I don't think any parent would want to talk about why it wasn't put on there because it cost, and I'm going to say $1,000 or $2,000. So it's all about child safety, clear enforcement of the challenges and practices, the solutions. I think it's a pretty easy fix. As we all know, all the vehicles we drive have cameras. We got them in the front bumper, the back bumper. Sometimes you have them on the mirrors. And nobody's said how much that costs and is it really worth it in the long run. So Teamsters Local 633 absolutely fully supports this bill, and I'm be glad to take any questions anybody has.
Thank you. So you talked about the cost, and I know First Student has the buses for all the districts in my districts.
Right.
Do you think maybe First Student would be able to come together and buy these cameras collectively, maybe be able to get them at a cheaper cost and then distribute that instead of putting it directly on each school district?
Well, we deal with First Student as a group throughout the state, one person we deal with. I haven't spoken with him. I mean, obviously, there's a cost involved, and the cost is in the bid when they bid for the runs. So I'm sure the cost would be shared further up the line. But I can tell you that there's no reason that the gentleman that runs it would not certainly sit down and speak with us. We have a great relationship with First Student and STA. I think it would be a great cost-sharing measure. But again, that would be up to them to negotiate.
And hold on one second, Representative Muse. I just want to question. You had mentioned that the bill not being perfect, but not many are. Do you have any recommendations that are not here that you think maybe would help the bill or maybe need to be out?
You know, I really don't represent it. I apologize.
That's okay.
I'm
Okay.
more about the physical aspects of things than I am the technical aspects of it.
Okay.
I was a truck driver for 25 years myself, so I can tell you how things work. I don't know how to make laws work.
Representative Muse.
Really quickly, could you just tell me how a stop arm camera works? Because one of the things I'm thinking about, and maybe it's because I haven't had any food in 4 hours, but it's how do you get a camera to take a picture in both directions? How is it set up on the
Well,
stop arm?
as I imagine it, I haven't personally seen them, but I believe there's a lens on both sides of the camera when it swings out.
Okay.
And when it's closed, it does nothing. But when it swings out, then there's a lens on both sides.
Okay, thank you. I'm all set.
Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh, Representative LaSalle's?
Yes. School bus safety equipment, is that a federal mandate or is that a state mandate?
Well, the bus drivers are controlled by the, have to have commercial driver's license, Department of Transportation. Federal mandate is for the drivers and the vehicles. State mandate would be more probably what this is involved with. But, you know, they are all federally DOT certified drivers, so there's a combination of both.
Follow up, Madam Chair? I know that, for instance, there are hatches on the roof of a bus to allow students to climb out and so forth. And I assume that is a federal mandate toward the manufacturers. If you're going to sell a bus in the United States, you have to have these hatches.
Correct.
Why couldn't they say, if you're going to sell a bus in this country, why can't you have a stop arm camera?
It would seem simple, but if you would think the federal government could do anything simply, we'd be waiting a long time for them to do it.
Good answer.
unlike this great state legislature that we have here.
Nothing ever gets in the way here. Thank you very much for your
Thank you,
time
thank
today.
you very much for what you do, and thank you for your time.
Is there anybody else here wishing to testify on House Bill 1537 that is not turned into paint card? Re- Yes, Representative.
I'd like to comment on the comparison between 1308 and this one.
Hold on one second. You guys okay with that? Come on up.
Thank you. I was aware 1308 was coming in, and we discussed briefly over the phone, and what the primary sponsor did on that was put enabling legislation in here to enable this legislation to take place. So they're complementary.
Oh,
So this
fantastic.
says that if this is going to be a Class B misdemeanor, then this video footage is going to be allowed. That's all it says. It's not, this does not allow cameras, doesn't specify what the camera is or anything else. It just says that the camera information may be used in the prosecution of a Class B misdemeanor.
Okay.
Where this says this is what the camera is and on all of its things. And yes, it is not a mandate. It is up to the busing. And yes, bulk purchases would be better. And Representative Muse, the way the camera operates is if you have a single stop arm, you have a you can get a dual facing camera that fits in there that's activated only when the stop arm is extended. And if you have double stop arms, you can have single face cameras. In some states, Midwest, where they have long distances to travel and a little bit longer buses, use the two stop signs or stop bars.
Thank you, Representative. I think I'm going to go to my next school board meeting and ask them, maybe many school districts could get together and write to First Student and ask them maybe to collectively look into purchasing cameras. I mean, obviously the school districts have to pay for it, but it would certainly be cheaper if they were bought all together than individual. But that's just my opinion. All right, I'm going to close the public hearing on House Bill 1537. And our next hearing is at 1 o'clock. Welcome back. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, Matt. It is 1:02. I apologize, 2 minutes late. Darn, broke my record. We are going to reopen the public hearing on House Bill 1641 that was recessed from January 14th. And we thank the sponsor for coming back to join us and her understanding that we did the best we could that day. And with that being said, I will welcome the sponsor to introduce her legislation.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. I'm very happy to be here. I'm very happy to return and talk to you and all the committee members. My name's Representative Zoe Manos. I represent Stratham, which is District 12 in Rockingham County. I'm very pleased to be able to present this bill to you. This bill comes out of the horrific murder of Marisol Fuentes in Berlin last July. After Ms. Fuentes' murder, the judicial branch and the AG's office each undertook thorough reviews to determine what steps could have been taken to avoid her murder. What were the failures and what additional protections are needed to prevent tragic deaths or injuries to victims of domestic violence? Excuse me. This bill is relative to petitions for orders of protection where the defendant is released on bail or probation. The intent of this bill is to inform the prosecutor and probation officer if an order of protection is issued in a domestic violence or stalking case against a defendant who is currently released on bail or probation. That information would be conveyed by the clerk's office in the court where the order of protection has been issued and would be transmitted to the prosecutor and probation officer for the court in which the bail was set or the probation was ordered. The clerk's office would be required to transmit a copy of the order within 24 hours, excluding any weekend or holiday. This would enable the prosecutor or the probation officer to determine whether to seek a modification or a revocation of bail or probation based on the risk posed by the defendant against whom an order of protection has newly been issued while the person is on bail or probation. In this case, a civil stalking petition was filed by a 17-year-old minor against Marisol Fuentes' abusive husband, alleging sexual assaults against her beginning approximately 6 months earlier. Although he was already under bail, criminal bail conditions, which possibly were violated by his alleged sexual assaults against the minor, the ex parte stalking order, temporary order of protection, was not transmitted to the prosecutor. The prosecutor, therefore, was unable to use this information to request that the defendant's criminal bail be modified or revoked after the minor was granted a stalking temporary order of protection for the alleged sexual assaults against her. If the prosecutor had known that Marisol Fuentes' abusive husband had allegedly committed another crime, the prosecutor could have sought to modify or revoke the defendant's bail. This bill would assure that that information is provided to the prosecutor or the probation officer by the clerk's office in which the order of protection was issued within 24 hours, as I said, excluding weekends and holidays. I've spoken with Patricia Conway, who's the county prosecutor for Rockingham County, which is the county in which Stratham is. She believes that this bill will be helpful to prosecutors. My understanding from my conversation with her is that not all police prosecutors are aware of newly issued orders of protection against defendants. A defendant's criminal history would show new restraining orders, but it isn't run every day, so restraining orders can be missed. So this would be helpful to prosecutors. The fiscal note states that the judicial branch would need 43 dedicated full-time court operations specialists to handle the tasks required by this bill. I question that. I respectfully suggest that a centralized staff person could serve all of the courts and therefore handle these tasks by one person rather than us needing 43 dedicated full-time court specialists. And I'm happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Representative Murray?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for taking my question. You might not know the answer to this, but do you know if this is the kind of information that it is included in the like data system that we approved funding for in the previous session? Because this is kind of intentionally the thing that we were trying to target, is making sure that bail commissioners have the information about whether it's protective order or their current bail status, etc. So do you know if that funding will already help with this?
I don't know explicitly. However, in speaking with Attorney Conway, she seemed to recognize and convey that this is still a problem and that this would be extremely helpful to prosecutors in getting that information. And she emphasized to me in particular that in towns where prosecution is being done by police prosecutors, that this is particularly a problem because the police prosecutors are not running a defendant's criminal record frequently enough to catch whether an additional order of protection has been issued. And so, at least as my conversation with Attorney Conway last week, my understanding is it's still a problem.
Anybody else have any questions? We good? All right, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Kylie, did you want to weigh in on this particular bill? Would you mind coming up and joining us, and we'll just have you fill out a pink card? You can fill it out after you're done.
Good afternoon. My name is Pamela Kylig, and I'm from the Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence.
Thank you, Ms. Kylig. So I actually had the same question that my colleague had. So if you remember, we passed that comprehensive bill package, and in the first year, we had $1 million that was set aside, basically to build out the system so that the bail commissioners, the officers, everybody involved would know who indeed was on bail and who was not. And then my understanding is that I believe died in the Senate. I scratched my head on that. But anyway, I believe it was effective with the new bail statute that we passed. Are you aware if that is indeed happening? Is it not happening? Is this information being shared or not? Like, what do you know?
What I know is that it is a lot more complicated than I think it should be.
You don't say.
I'm more than happy to try to pull some information together. I think one of the, from what I understand kind of on a global perspective, is that there's a lot of different ways that information is passed from like law enforcement across the state. I know that there's been a lot of emphasis on the J1 program. And so, I had spoken with Rep. Manos about that too, and I don't know if that relates or would interrelate with this particular bill. But what I would say is I do think any information that we can get between law enforcement and the courts would be helpful, because I do think there is an overlapping communication challenge that we have with ensuring that information is getting to the right people to make informed decisions. And I think there's an added layer of complexity between the state police and then local departments. So I don't have an easy answer, and I'm not even sure that helped answer your question at all. But I would say that there's a lot of layers of like concurrent conversations happening, and that there's definitely room for improvement. And so anything that can help streamline that process and get information to where it needs to go, I think that's why we're supportive of this effort. But I would say that there are existing challenges that need to be addressed.
Thank you. So the existing challenges is the legislation in front of us, in your opinion, is obviously you support the legislation. So is there anything that you think that we could add to this to strengthen what it is, what we have in front of us here?
I would have to take a closer look at the bill again.
Okay.
I think this is a good step in the right direction, but I think we would have additional recommendations. I don't want that to stop this from moving forward necessarily. But I'd be happy to kind of pull together some of the information that from like other stakeholders that have brought up some like issues kind of relating to this topic, if that'd be helpful.
Okay. Well, it certainly wouldn't hurt.
Okay.
And in your spare time, if you want to work on that and just being comfortable. Does anybody have any questions? Representative Murphy?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ooh, twice in one day, Representative.
That's what happens when you're quiet for a little while. I'm just looking at this and recognizing, I think what we've all seen over time, the challenges with the communication between departments and the fallout from that. And I'm looking at that, the lines 3 to 3 to 5. And it looks like, I know it's probably the best we can do, but if the clerk's office, I wish somebody was here actually from the clerk's office so we could have asked some questions, but if the expectation is for them to transmit orders within 24 hours excluding a weekend or holiday, potentially, if they have 24 hours, something, just say this, I don't know, this happens on a Friday and it's a long weekend, so Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then they still have 24 hours. Does that mean it could be like Wednesday or it just seems like a really long time with something that it should be a priority, and I don't know how to get around that, but
Well, and I do think that the other kind of piece of this is that the court's case management system, from what has been explained to me, like also has limitations on around how files are distributed from court to court, and that was, I think, some of the challenges that are also surrounded the case that the sponsor mentioned, in terms of like why the protection order didn't get wasn't part of the conversation for the bail hearing. So I think like my understanding is those things get faxed from one place to the other, and so I think my big takeaway for everyone is that we're operating in kind of different systems of communication, and then some of them are a bit more antiquated than the rest. But I would definitely defer to the courts for a technical understanding on how this would operate within their system, but also think it might be helpful to speak to folks from law enforcement to learn more about how this might interact too.
It's amazing how small New Hampshire is and the amount of difficulty we have with communication. It is quite disheartening, in my opinion. It just doesn't seem like it should have to be this hard. Okay, so if I may, piggybacking on Representative Murphy, is there anything now? So this, the 24 hours, excluding the weekends and holidays. So is this really, we're just back to of why they're just not uploaded immediately, regardless? I mean, if it's Friday at 5:00, is it just back to the whole, the system has not been implemented?
I would love to help find that answer for you. I don't know off the top of my head, so I'd definitely be happy to try to help answer that, but I can't right now.
I think it's that they have not implemented the system that they were given the money to implement, is what I think the answer is to. But yeah, it's a shame we don't have anybody from the court. Okay, well, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but thank you for being on the spot. All right, looks like we're all set. Thank you. Anybody else here? Is there anybody else here wishing to testify on House Bill 1641 that has not turned in a pink card? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. At this time, I'm going to open an executive session for House Bill 1291. And does anybody have a motion? Okay, I will recognize myself to make a motion of inexpedient to legislate for House Bill 1291. Seconded by Representative Harriet Gathright. And speaking on my motion, I believe with everybody here is feeling the same way. We have had a lot of discussion over the last couple of terms over drones, and I do believe the last biennium we actually passed some significant improvements for the drones overall. And the one thing that we are continuously hearing is that we just do not have jurisdiction over federal airspace. I believe the bill that we were brought this morning does have good intentions, and I do thank the sponsor for bringing it forward and trying to address some constituent concerns that he has had. I just don't believe that the legislation in front of us is going to do anything. And I believe that Representative Muse brought up, some very good questions, and one being exactly who are you getting permission from when it comes to, that kind of airspace. And then we did have this situation with the utility companies, and it seems like they have their process under pretty decent control, and it sounded like it was just going to maybe put some obstacles in their path that aren't necessary. And that's what I have to say. Representative Gathright, did you have anything? All right. Anybody else have anything to add? All right, well, seeing none, I will ask the clerk to call the roll. The motion is inexpedient to legislate for House Bill 1291. Start with Rich.
Representative LaSalle's,
Yes.
Representative Devoid,
Yes.
Representative Paquette,
Yes.
Representative Saborn Deschrenier,
Yes.
Representative Harry Gathright, Representative Muse,
Yes.
Representative Newman,
Yes.
Representative Murphy.
Yes.
The clerk votes yes. Madam Chair Rhodes,
The chair votes yes.
10-0.
Motion passes 10-0. Is there any objection to consent? All right, seeing none, we will put that on consent, and I will close the executive session for House Bill 1291. And okay, seeing no other business before us, we are done with our business for today, and I believe we'll be back on Wednesday.